Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, Life After Loss. My name is Lindsay, and today I'm going to be discussing the relationship between guilt and the grief experience. Guilt is something that we have all encountered at one point in our lives, whether it be because we felt that we could have done something better, we did something wrong, or we did something to harm someone else. Guilt is commonly experienced when you lose a loved one because initially there can be more questions than there are answers, and this gives your mind time and space to think, to ruminate, to process, and to try to understand what has actually happened, which was the death of your loved one. Three of the common things that people normally feel guilty about are as follows. The first one is not being able to say goodbye. So we have to look at this from two different perspectives. The first perspective is when someone loses someone as a result of a sudden death. This wasn't expected. This wasn't something that happened as a result of disease. So in my experience, when talking to people that have lost their loved ones suddenly, the notion tends to be similar. So for instance, they feel as though they didn't get to say goodbye, literally. They also start reflecting on their last interaction before their loved one passed away, and they question, did I say that I love them? Did I tell them how much they meant to me? Did I hug them enough? Did I not have a way to know that this was coming? How could I have not known? These are some of the sentiments of guilt, of resentment, and of denial that people can experience initially. Now, when you look at the other perspective, which is the perspective of someone that loses someone as a result of a progressive disease, the experience tends to be different but yet similar in many ways. When you know that your loved one is probably going to pass away in the near future, there are a lot of things that you can do to prepare for their death. However, there is no preparation known to man that will ever suffice being able to let go of your loved one, because at the end of the day, we want our loved ones to be with us forever and ever, or at least until our time has actually come up. So even when they're able to say the words goodbye, even when they're there to see their loved one take their last breath, their sentiment remains the same. Did I tell them that I loved them enough? Was I there enough times next to them? Did I care enough about them? Do they know how much they meant to me? So those are some of the feelings of guilt that people on both perspectives can actually experience. Now, the second common thing that people normally feel guilty about is all the would haves, the could haves, the should haves. I should have done this. I should have not done this. I could have said this. And the list goes on and on. It simply makes us create all these endless possibilities that in fact doesn't lead to anything but feeling pretty down about yourself, pretty guilty, and feeling as though you had some responsibility, and questioning whether your loved one knew to the extent that you loved them and to the extent that you cared about them. The third common thing that normally people feel guilty about is perhaps conflict that may have been present either 1,000 years ago or more recently towards the end of the life of their loved one. So if you have a tumultuous relationship with someone and then they pass away, those feelings of guilt can come up as, should I have argued that much with that person? Should I have just put our differences to the side and let our relationship flow the way it was supposed to? Should I have accepted that person? Those are just some of the things that people, when there's conflict present, can typically think about and feel guilty about once their loved one passes away. The one thing to know about emotions, period, is that they are there to send us messages. They are there to tell us something about ourselves that we are not addressing. Now, with emotions, we can either process them, listen to them, sit with them, or we can try to put them in a nice, very small box and hope that that box never opens. Now, what happens with emotions is that they will start with a little tickle, then they will give you a soft nudge, and then finally that box will just explode open and you won't know what actually hit you. So it'll feel like you're overwhelmed with the experience simply because it's all happening at the same time. What might you ask is guilt trying to tell us about our grief experience? Now, everyone's experience will be different with guilt, and you'll feel guilty about different things. And this is one thing that I say to people time and time again when the conversation of guilt comes up. Guilt is a poison that we all choose to drink of. We have different cups of poison that we can drink of, and now you have to choose which cup to drink from, because in essence you can feel guilty about everything. So it can be very exhausting, draining. It can actually have a physical effect on your body where it can suppress your immune system. It can make you susceptible to having heart-related conditions, and the list goes on and on. So you really have to pick and choose what you're going to feel guilty about, and understand that there are just simply going to be things that are out of your control. But going back to what does guilt tell us about our grief experience, it's a way for us to try to rationalize and understand the death. It's a way that we get to put blame as to whether it's to ourselves or someone else or something else as to why our loved ones had to pass away. It's the way we try to look at death from a very technical and logical perspective. We become the judge, the prosecutor, and the juror of ourselves. We feel in essence that it was our responsibility to keep that loved one alive, and we create this notion that we have more control than what we actually have. It's almost as though we're trying to play God. Like if there was just something that we would have done or we would have said, the outcome would have changed. And in essence, all that is saying is that you're not wanting to accept the death, which is normal. It's part of the denial stage, is that you're not wanting to accept, to surrender control, that no matter how much you tried, no matter what you would have said, the outcome still remains the same. Guilt oftentimes represents that struggle, that battle with the control that a lot of us have a really hard time in letting go. While we cannot change what has already happened, it shows us that we can change what we do going forward. I'll share one example with you. So one of the things that I was guilty about or felt guilty about for a long time when my mom passed away was the fact that months prior to her passing, she had asked me to accompany her to a cardiologist appointment that she was wanting to make. Now, my response to her was initially, you know what, I'll let you know. I'm not sure. I'm busy with work. I'm busy with school. I'll let you know. Finally, I never let her know. She never attended that cardiologist appointment. And months later, she died of a massive heart attack. Now, that is something that I had to live with. I've had to live with, and I've had to really process and understand what I did and how I felt, which was like crap, and rightfully so. I felt responsible that had I taken my mother or had I accompanied my mother to that cardiologist appointment, my mother perhaps would have been here. Perhaps the results would have showed something that would have alerted the doctors to put her under treatment. And now one of the things that I had to come to grips with and accept and come to peace with was the fact that my mother could have been in the middle of an emergency room and had that massive heart attack, and the outcome would have remained the same. And those are the things that I had to process. We all have a set time on this earth. We all have a date of expiration. There's going to come a time where we're no longer going to be here. And it's never an easy thing to accept or to have to face. But for some reason, again, we think we're in more control than what we actually have. Listen to your emotions as they come up, because they are coming up for a reason. They're not there to shame you. They're not there to make you feel horrible about yourself. They're just there for you to pay attention to them. What that experience actually showed me was that I needed to prioritize and really take a look at what was important. Was it school? Was it work? Was it all of these daily activities that we take part in and feel like it's so important, when in reality, they're not. They're just a part of life and some of the things that we do in order to accomplish things. But really, what I learned from that experience is that people are important. It's your loved ones that are important and deserve your time. And now I take priority for my family over work. I know that feelings of guilt will come up for you. And I simply tell you this: honor your emotional experience, honor your grief experience, honor everything that comes up, because it is coming from somewhere genuine. You're not a horrible person, and it is not your fault that your loved one is not here. So I thank you once again for joining me. And remember, what others have to say about your grief experience is none of your business, because there is no right or wrong way to grief. There is simply your way. I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Make sure to turn on those notifications so that you're alerted as to when I upload my videos. Also, please make sure to follow me on Instagram, lifeafterloss0322. And for any questions, comments, or suggested topics, please feel free to email me at lifeafterloss0322@gmail.com. I thank you so much. Until the next.